Just gonna wait a little bit.
Okay, it is on YouTube.
We are they live? That's the funny part. Maybe we should go. I want to go check. On
Yes, live.
They're live.
Hello.
We're live. Oh, damn. All right. I'm gonna do a quickie here. Is Ken here? Everybody here?
Yeah.
All right. All right. Welcome to the episode 16 of the Audio Discord podcast. We're doing a little bit of a conflicting episode with the other podcast right now, but today I am with my usual co-host that I will not introduce, because just same old folks. We're talking about drivers and their correlation to resolution. I know it's kind of like that's the topic that we're supposed to have last week, but the corn is absent last week, so we did something else. But yeah, we're talking about drivers and resolution. I know it's kind of like a tricky topic to talk about, and probably, I don't know, depends on how long this takes. We're gonna see. But I don't know, like, why don't I, like, Corn, why don't you just give us what you thought about this, like, the whole resolution thing, because it's kind of like a pursuit. It's never like a for sure thing, right? Nothing's really, like, people can't. It's kind of hard to explain, I feel like.
Yeah. Regarding resolution, there isn't like a measure for it. There isn't a metric. For example, even stuff like THD, there is a limit as to the perceived benefits of a lower THD, and it caps out quite early actually. So when it comes to resolution, the term is very vague, and my personal suspicion is that it's got to do with the frequency response of the driver, especially in the upper treble range, like past 10K.
Yeah, and I think it just has a lot to do with like tuning and stuff. I think like people say like a perceived resolution when you have like a very, like, you know, when a lot of tri-fi tune their treble like way up, so it feels like it's brighter than it is, and people, like, your brain perceive it as more clear. But I don't well, this isn't it. Oh, I mean, we're just talking about like the drivers and whatnot. So what's your thought on it, Ken? I don't know, like, if you have any thoughts on the resolution thing, when it comes to like drivers, or just in general.
I do. But just to add on and what my take on what Con said. So like the absence of treble extension, as you mentioned, may reduce resolution. So we take this example, like when telephones were landline, when phones were GSM and not voice over LTE, the band, the frequency range for the calls are much narrower. And also, so when you have a call, you feel a lot lower res than in real life. And now in today's standard, we have wideband and whatever marketing names they call it, HD voice and etc. Just basically having a wider frequency response for your voice calls, and that instantly, hey, higher resolution. That of course, the bit rate is also higher, right? So going back to the versus driver part, I think the type of driver is more important when is how they implement it, like the method how they implement it. Like normally, when a chip single DD, it seems like there's lesser resolution than a cheaper single BA, but when you have multi-BA setup and it's a poor implementation, hey, the resolution goes downhill. And of course, Raj, you also mentioned a lot on the hybrids having low res, like G5 hybrids and etc. They don't function very well. So there's a lot to do with the implementation, more than just the driver itself.
Right.
And of course, for headphones, you have electrostats and planar, but I suppose we're not talking about that today.
Yeah, we're not talking about
Yeah.
that for the headphone talk. You can tune
Yeah,
into
correct.
the headphone show that's going on right now. I don't know what we're talking about. Anthony, I don't know. What's your thought on the driver thing? You are the the material scientist.
Yeah, so
So
I think a lot. So I think there's the perceived resolution, which typically I think to me is boosting treble. So everything sounds very forward. So people get the, I guess, the psychoacoustic impression that you hear everything because everything is very, I guess, in your face. So you get to literally hear everything. That's one thing, and then I think the other is treble extension, like Ken mentioned, which helps kind of fill out the entire sound of every instrument. And then I also think coming from the engineering I guess aspect is like for a dynamic driver, I think stiffer, thinner materials, faster pistonic motion will generate better resolution also. And I think that has, I think if you went with like a some plastic material, your resolution is not going to be as good because it doesn't vibrate the same way that a stiffer material might. So
right.
speed and stiffness and all of that I think contribute to how well controlled the sound waves are bouncing off.
Yeah, I think you're right, and it makes sense to me. And I'm not a scientist, and I'm glad that you brought up single DD. I think that's where we should start. Just compare single DD to itself. I think like in Korn is like he's famous for saying that single DD have no treble extension, and in my head, and Anthony's right, and when you have like a harder material with like a thinner diaphragm, um, you can just if in my head it feels like, oh, if the driver moved faster it will produce like faster, more sound wave, better resolution. It just makes sense in my head. But going to the corn is like, so just in terms for this driver resolution and driver talk corn, so why do you think, or why do you, or why is that single DD have like really a treble extension problem? I know we talked about this before.
Well, I think it comes down to the dampening of the driver, where I mean in single DDs there is like a 5.5K kind of kilohertz boost, and that boost tends to be, as in that spike can be quite intense, so manufacturers prefer to damp the DD more, which in turn would damp the treble extension as well. So I guess it's about finding a balance. Although recently we've been seeing more and more DDs with better treble extension, for example, the IE 400 and 500. Yeah, I mean, the tuning on the mid range is kind of weird, but in terms of treble extension, it does extend, but although a bit in a spiky way as well. And as well, I've seen the Acoustune, the 1.6 series, where I have to say that the treble extension is much better than compared to the 1.5 series. So I guess there is some improvement being made to dynamic drivers in IEMs, but of its current state, in terms of like subjectively speaking, in terms of staging properties, I don't feel that single DD can outperform, say, a multi-bass setup in terms of separation, uh, and imaging as well.
Right, and I mean there is that inherent disadvantage of only having one driver, and I feel like you don't really have that. You have that size constraint on an IEM. And obviously you don't really have that problem for for headphones because their single DD is giant. So
I heard
you
that
don't really.
there's a 3DD driver coming out that you
On
you
a,
may like.
oh, I don't know if Korn wants a. How is the a treble extension like on the triple DD QDC?
Oh, the D Magic has a honestly it does extend up top, but the issue is that the lower treble is a bit suppressed, so it's a bit dull sounding, but at the same time extended. So it's kind of a weird state, I would say. I do like it, but the treble is kind of wishy-washy, perhaps.
Okay. I mean that's not really a single DD anymore. So like, I don't know how I want to feel about that. But that's episode for another day. What about you, Ken? Any of the favorite Yeah, you like you like single DD. Well, I mean you like DD, but
Yeah.
like, Ken, is there anything that you're pretty okay with? Like, I mean, you're not the most treble treble focused person, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if we talk about single DD, yes, the acoustic HS15, there's no treble extension. Typically, like just after 8K, there's man. The 16 series, yeah, there's actually quite a bit. Well, at least enough for my hearing range. And because we're going back to like single DD versus single BA, right? Like this is then single DD versus multi BA, but when we look at speakers and stuff, like most of the single driver absolutely suck so bad, and similarly, they are not designed for a wide frequency range, and that's why good headphones are very expensive, isn't it? And having a very very good treble extension. So I still think that the driver choice is one. The inherent design of the driver, we talk about material being harder, getting lower THD and stuff, but ultimately it's the implementation with other components like having multi-way and 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 stuff to get more transportation. Like example, I think this QDC has a coaxial base and mid driver and a separate tweeter, right? So the dedicated tweeter for that. And even Z1R has 2DD, one for the base and one dedicated tweeter.
Yeah, and I like how you brought up the coaxial design for you, Ken. And we talk about, like, Ken and I talk about speakers a lot of times, just when we're like off air, and when QDC announced that D Magic thing, we just I just kind of assumed, like, okay, so it's a coaxial design. I just kind of assumed that it's like the speaker, it's going to be coaxial mid and high, and then you have a woofer for the bass. Obviously, that's not the. So for those of you who don't know what the D Magic setup is, a coaxial low and mid with a tweeter high. What's your take on that setup, Ken? Like, just because like you would assume it's just like, oh yeah, nice, it's like a shrunk down coaxial speaker, right? But it isn't. So like, I don't know if you have any thoughts on the maybe some like a strange design. Maybe, I don't know.
I guess on a speaker setup, it is such that, okay, if it's a coaxial mid and high and it's a dedicated woofer, typically, if he's a huge woofer and a much smaller tweeter slash mid driver coaxial design, right? So it really works because you need that bass driver to be huge to bring in the sub bass. But I guess when you shrink it down to IEM wise, it's a little different. Maybe from an engineering standpoint, having a low mid and a dedicated tweeter is better, because dedicated tweeters for IEMs are probably easier to make since Z1R has one,
Yeah.
I still give them props for like, creating, or rather being innovative, create like this new innovation of coaxial in even the bass and mid, which I personally have not heard another, or I've not tried of another similar design IEM.
Yeah, there's some, like, random, other like smaller, random DIY tri-fi company that make those coaxial driver before. I don't think we ever really seen that triple DD setup in another IEM, like in a production level before.
Yeah.
And maybe going back to single DD, and Anthony, just maybe just on like the difficulty of shrinking the technology down, about why that you really have a, you can have a single DD and IEM, and it's very limited. And then you have a single DD in the headphone, but that one just kind of does everything very well. I don't know, like Anthony, and that's not your like really expertise. Well, you're like material scientist, but you don't really do anything with like sound and engineering, like sound or anything like that.
Nope.
Do you really see? Do you really see like at a point that you can have a single DD that's like like that's pretty relatively well rounded? Maybe let me put it that way.
I think you could. What I find interesting is when you look at a speaker, like a full size speaker. Most of the speakers kind of drop off at 70, 80 hertz and go up all the way, past 20, 30 kilohertz. And then you have to balance that out with a subwoofer. And then you go to IEMs, and it's like the complete opposite, where you can put a single DD IEM and it goes way down to below 20, but it kind of dies off around 8 or 9 kilohertz. So I find that's kind of interesting. And I don't know if that has to do with how it's tuned. I think I imagine that you could probably just like how you set up speakers in your home, by positioning it, by putting dampening features in it, or how placement of the speakers and stuff like that. I imagine that you could probably do the same with like the IEM shell or in all the acoustic chambers inside of it to kind of bring out some of the stuff that most of the current designs are missing. But that does require a bit of research and time and development.
Right,
and I know some
shrinking
companies
everything.
have done that type of stuff, like Campfire, for example. But they're all still missing that extra trouble, which I personally really like and need.
Yeah.
I would like-
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So when we talk about like and talk about like for speakers, it's really hard to do sub bass, and you need like 3-way to do really good sub bass or well extended in the lower region, or just dedicated subwoofer, right? But it's like having earbuds, they not that it doesn't do bass because it does not seal. When it does not seal, you lose sub bass. So inversely, when you look at IEMs, it's not that my take is not that the DD is easy to do sub bass in because it's in IEM form, but because you simply seal it and then you get your sub bass response.
So you're saying if I seal myself in a room with a subwoofer, I'll get better subwoofer.
It's true. It is true.
If I seal myself in my room in an airtight environment.
Well, it is true. I mean, let's say you have a subwoofer, like speaker subwoofer system in a room, right? If you have it, like your windows, everything open versus, like
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, you do get more.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, it does make sense. Yeah, if you have a. Yeah.
So from a science standpoint, that's my take from explaining that, and even in speaker setup, like I mentioned, right, it's at least a 2-way for bookshelf. I mean, all the 1-way, the single driver speakers I heard are utter rubbish, utter crap, utter trash. So minimum is 2-way. So similarly, like a single DD, I think for headphones and earphones that can actually do some treble extension is really quite a fit to start with, and yeah.
Right. Let's move on from for the inferior flawed design of a single DD, to the much superior design of multi-BA IEMs. And I don't like this is like in general. I want to say like we're not. I think in general multi-BA have better resolution compared to single DD, just because they are kind of what originally was designed for hearing aids, but like they are kind of designed for like a small form factor, and they are designed to do a single a smaller frequency response range compared to a single DD. That's why you have like multiple of them, and I think in general, not like you always have the outliers of like shitty chi-fis with like 8 different BA having shittier resolution than a well done single DD. but in like if you're doing like top of the line stuff, I think in like top of the line multi BA will always have a better resolution than like top of the line single DD. So I know it has a lot to do with implementation. Than anything else. And why don't I just go to Corn again? And your thoughts on the maybe the single DD versus the multi BA, because you obviously prefer the multi BA setup, right, Corn?
Yeah, I do prefer multi BA. I don't know exactly why it sounds more separated, but in terms of stereo imaging, I would say the multi BAs tend to have an edge over the dynamic drivers, where I don't know, it just feels that a dynamic driver is like a bit constrained, I would say, compared to a multi BA that's able to make a clearer distinction between the separation of instruments.
Well, I mean, they do have a separate driver doing the separate instrument, right? Depends on like what you're listening to. Like, say you're listening to like orchestra and how the drivers are set up. I feel like because I feel like in the separation you get is from the driver separation. Like you're not, it's not from the same driver that's making the sound, right? It makes sense in my head at least. I'm not the smart one. You're supposed to explain this to me.
No, as in, if that's an answer, like manufacturers have probably been doing that to attain a quote unquote resolution, I guess. But I guess it's quite a divisive topic as well, where some people say that one driver is better because you get better coherency. Yeah, there's a lot of a argument towards using a single driver over a multi-driver setup, but at the same time, there are people who, I mean, I myself prefer multi-driver setups where I get a clearer, a better imaging and separation.
Okay. And and I don't think anybody knows for sure why that is. Like you have better resolution than comparing like multi BA than single DD. But like it's just the trend of the market right now, and I think I don't know. But like, what about? And you also do have a lot more engineering when it comes to multi BA, because like I feel like it's a lot more work to design a multi BA compared to a single DD, right? There's a lot to mess around, such as like crossover and stuff, right? Right, Corn?
Yeah, definitely. Like if you look up the impedance graphs of say single DDs, like they tend to be super flat in terms of electrical phase as well as impedance. Well, because they are single driver, right? But once you throw in a crossover, the impedance tends to go to shit and the phase tends to act a little bit weird. But in terms of single BA, their impedance isn't actually flat. Like for a lot of models that I do know of, for example, the Ademotic, or like both of the ER4s, where the drivers tend to have a bit of a, I think they have a rising impedance towards 20k. So the higher, as in the higher your source impedance is, they'll get increasingly brighter on the top end. So DDs are much more consistent when it comes to a flat impedance curve.
Okay. And
Well,
go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, well, it is true that most DDs have flatter impedance curve. There are quite a few exceptions for headphones. They have some weird spike at like the base region, like the Utopia, So yeah, we go back to the BA having this wonky curve to start with, that like Raj, you mentioned like the multi BA setup, or has more work to be put on. I think it's more of a pre and post. Like for a DD, a lot of work is put in the R&D, the material, the lab, etc. So it's not that it is cheap. It's expensive to design a good DD. It's much cheaper to manufacture after that, but the R&D is insane. Whereas, so it's a pre thing, the cost goes to the pre. But for BA, like most earphone manufacturers get ready made, like normal models from the catalog and so on. Of course, there are some exclusive manufacturers that can get special drivers or rather modified drivers, right? But for the main bulk is the costs are pretty much fixed. Be it just how much you buy, at what cost, and the inherent cost is really higher. But they spend a lot of because the R&D is really bought by the manufacturers of the PA to start with. So what they spend on is the money for the crossovers and time to design a crossover. So it's more of a posting. So yeah.
Right, and I like how you put it because it's a lot. And speaking of the manufacturers that makes those drivers, for BA drivers, you do have a way bigger monopoly in that market because most drivers either came from Sony or Knowles, or if you like Knowles ripoff, you can buy the Tri-Fi Belsing Campfire. So and you do have a lot more manufacturers that make their own single DD. So I feel like there's a lot more variation in terms of a single DD, but at the same time, I feel like you get a lot more different flavors just from the different crossover from the Knowles and Sony drivers. So I don't know when it comes to manufacturing, and again, it's the Anthony question about. I know implementation is like more important, and maybe like I'm very not, and that's something that I talked to Ken about. Having I see a lot of like single DD Chi-Fis nowadays. Like they're always using the same driver. I'm not. I'm very not okay with it. And this maybe like stray away a little from the resolution talk. Like now, like you see like what the blown driver, the 05 driver has now been using on what I like 5 different IEMs with like the Tatachi and Hana. They all sound the same. Like, what's your thought about like the lack of variation in single DD, Anthony?
Well, I mean, if you want your products to be super cheap, reusing the same available resources is much cheaper than creating new technology, I guess.
Yes, like not from a manufacturing standpoint, but maybe from a consumer standpoint. Like, are you?
Well,
it's just
to me that ties into consumer because people want the cheapest product with the best performance. So,
well, I mean, if they're the same, then I don't know, man.
Yeah, you do lose a little bit of options, I think, but at the same time, it's hard to say because a lot of the Chi-Fi is just kind of either rebranded, same products rebranded, or very little, or just taking existing shells, putting existing drivers in, and giving it a new paint job and calling it a day in a lot of cases. So you are kind of muddying up the waters with like the same products over and over again. But then you go to like companies that are making new dynamic drivers like Dunu and Final with their beryllium drivers. But now you're looking at $2,000, or $1,700 and $2,000 IEMs, which it's a big difference between $200 and $2,000.
Yeah, funny enough, the people that's making their own dynamic drivers, I don't think they have been very successful when it comes to that. How they are. And let me shout out to Tom, that's on the other podcast, who is the rep for Dunu. Yeah, definitely not a very successful venture when you have when you make your own beryllium drivers and somehow it has roll off on both ends instead of just one end.
Yeah,
and you improve the resolution.
It's like
the resolution is really good.
Is the resolution good?
I think it is.
When it rolls off in both ends?
I mean, for the mid-range, it's really good.
Okay, so it really just sacrificed the tonal balance of the IEM to have okay resolution in one section of the frequency. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't have much treble extension, I think.
The Luna?
Yeah, like it sounds rolled off.
It is roll off. Like you I mean even the A8000, let's not pick on Dunyu too much. Even on the A8000, it's not very good. Like it's beryllium. It's like and that one is like 2.5K or some ridiculous things like that, right? I don't know. Yeah. I
It's
mean,
new.
have you heard?
I mean, it's new. You're if you're buying it, you're paying for new technology that hasn't been optimized yet.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. Go ahead, Ken, if you have.
Yeah, well, the Duna could be good for a mid driver in a
Yeah.
two-way config, you know. So
Yeah.
well, it has is good use. And coming back to the point of price and stuff, now this really proves the point of R&D for DD is insane. You know, it's really insane, and it's not easy to reuse everything for that. But whereas for BA, yes, you know, the BA tech, you know, their drivers are much more expensive, but a lot of things can be transferred over, so to speak, you know, to create a new model. Whereas DD, you know, is just insane, which is why the costs are ridiculous, and the returns are obviously not so high, as you can see. If they're not selling the units, you know, they're not getting back their money.
Yeah, and I think Ken is right. Like when it comes to BA, has a lot to do with like the manufacturer who's making the DDs, and when it comes to like multi BA, is more have to do with the company who is making the IEMs to do the crossover and stuff. So just depends on what you do, and maybe going a little bit back to the special manufacturer driver stuff. Like there is one company that makes really good BAs and really good DDs, who is not selling any of their drivers to outside market. Funny enough, yes. um, do you want to talk about their drivers, Corin? Like, because I don't know, every podcast turned into an M9 podcast.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, let me go on to this. Like, um, maybe we can go into the multi BA talk first. In general, more driver, better resolution. Maybe we don't know implementation, right? But like maybe, but I think for house and maybe for a beginner, you would think that 10 drivers or 18 drivers must be better resolution than 4 or 5 drivers. Well, that's actually not the case. It has a lot to do with R&D on the driver and the manufacturer who's making those drivers, and also the implementation. Now, I think the reason why the M9 really have very little, driver compared to like the top end DD market, not like the top NBA market nowadays, is that they do their own driver in house, and they also like when you manufacturing like the entire chain of the IEM, I think you can really refine that process. Okay, you with your M9 rent, Corn. Why M9 is probably the best IEM in the world?
Well, I mean, I think for Sony, when it comes to their BAs, they do claim some more special technology, such as their, I think, T-shaped kind of firing pattern, as well as I think they use a bigger rod, the rod that's connecting the filament to the diaphragm. But in terms of like practical measurements, like just purely measurements, the Sony BAs actually tend to perform not as well as Nose and Sonian. So it's more. I guess it's interesting where it's a case of the measurements not really adding up. I guess to uh the perceived sound quality of the Sony BAs. Well, I
So
mean,
you're saying that the Sony BAs have higher THD and stuff?
yeah, they do have high THD.
But like they obviously they have found a way to work around that, right? Because I can you think of any other 5 driver IEMs with like maybe better resolution compared to the M9? I honestly like I feel like it like, or any other BA driver aside from the really top end QDCs.
Intro 2020, baby.
Are you stop?
No,
No, that's not.
edition
Yes,
Violet.
yes.
Edition Violet. Edition Violet.
Well, but that's on 11
That's like
drivers.
11, dude.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like again, like that's like top. Like again, that's also like 3 times the price. Like not even joking. That's literally 3 times the price, right? Or uh, and I find it like hard to like compare it to any other like IEM that's like around $1,000. You know, like if you don't if like even $2,000. You know, if you don't like um for like one to 1.5K, I don't think you can have anything that has maybe a better perceived or actual resolution than an M9 when it comes to like multi BA stuff. I don't think.
Well, for around the same price, no, I simply have not heard anything. You need
I
to
mean,
go upward of
like
twice
even
the
if you
price.
go way upwards, like it's still like pretty arguable that, you know, compared to V8, I know Korn is like V8. You know, that's not definitely, you know, maybe like the 12Ts, the VX, the 8 series, the Violets are obviously better but they're like multitudes of upwards of $2,000. You know, when it comes to like new. Um, yeah, but I think like maybe going to like the manufacturing process, having the, you know, having the manufacturing process and also the R&D when it comes to driver, definitely, like, you know, when from a production standpoint, that definitely does make sense. You know, when you have the same team of people working on those two projects. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Anthony, when you developed a whole new product that doesn't really have any existing.
I think it helps that Sony is a gigantic multinational company that is all over the
Right.
electronics world, so they have a ton of money,
Um,
and they actually care
yeah.
about developing new technology, versus, you know, most of the other companies are more just dedicated to making, you know, IEM products or headphone products. They're not they don't have resources across many different areas, and
Yeah.
the capital money to spend on developing technology like that.
Yeah, and you know, I think it all goes back to, you know, having money is a very nice thing too.
Yep.
It's also a key to develop something that's a very nice product.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is, and I can be completely wrong on this, but you know, Knowles and Sonian are I think their primary market is hearing aids, not necessarily music. So where Sony's dedicating their development to entertainment, so that might play a role too.
Right, because those companies started out as, you know, hearing aids, and then they have developed, like, changed their technology into like maybe more of a audiophile studio monitor, whereas Sony built their own BA from the ground up based on the fact that they want them to be, you know, studio monitors. Maybe like the, you know, where they're coming from is a little bit different. Um, Moving on to our favorite driver, the eStats. Um, it's such a weird. So Sony recently developed their own electric drivers, who is pretty much not eStats, what I call like a electric driven BA. Like that's what I want to call it, like a BA with a transformer or whatever. But before we go into that, the KSE 1500 and 1200, they are probably, like, from a single driver standpoint, it's probably they probably have the best, maybe not the best, very good top of the line, like top of the line in terms of resolution when it comes to electric static drivers. And you can see that as more. It's probably also the only pair of IEM that's scaled down relatively well, I want to say. I don't know, like, does the resolution is coming from the electrostatic setup, Corn, or is it just like, I don't know, like, you like the KSC 1500, right?
Yeah, I do. It sounds pretty fast, but in terms of tonality wise, it's a bit odd. But at the same time, it sounds very clear, I guess.
Yeah, and does it have, like, I think it contributes a lot really to the electrostatic setup, right? Just because it's like the physics behind it, like, is the diaphragm can move like infinitely faster. Just depends on your power output compared to a single DD.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. No comment.
Yeah, not much comment, I guess. But I do want to see an update to the KSC actually. In terms of tuning.
Well, I think that's the other thing. Like, you really lack the tunability when it comes to a single driver setup, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
with
true.
multi-PA, you get like crossover, but for single DD, I mean, or maybe electrostatic. I think mostly for single DD, it's just like the chamber and the tubes. But like that, even with that, you're not really tuning it much. Um, so like, you have a lot of these single driver, like the single niche driver, when it comes to the LCD i4 and the electrostatic from KSE. They are very wonky. Like, their tonality is really really messed up. But you do get great resolution though, so if that's what you like, um, when it comes to drivers. Um, and well, Ken, I know you probably hate the KSE lineup because it has no bass.
Well, I don't hate it. Like, okay, so we're talking about scaled down, right? From the headphones. I've been listening quite a bit of the stacks in the recent few weeks. When I went down to the store, and I must say, from how I remember the KSE, well, it's just resolution, like, so the resolution, the department, no problem there, like the electrostats deliver above and beyond. Tuning wise, yeah, I guess with IEM's electrostat being new in in the market, I guess tuning needs to be improved, but I think it's a good first attempt. It does have bass, but the bass decays. Well, it's electrostat, right? It decays really fast, so it hits you hard and disperse. It doesn't rumble. There's no sub bass. It's just lots of heavy mid bass and it smacks you and it just disappears right after that. So tone wise, yeah, it's not the best thing, but I still think it is good, like on its own. So I don't hate it. I can still enjoy a few things with it. And well, vocals, if you don't care about tonality, yeah, it does give you really really a lot of resolution. But if you, it's just like the Tia for Forte and Tia Trio, right? Like for folks who do not really care about the tonality, they don't care about the instruments placement, they just want resolution and they want a hybrid, they go for those, right? So the KSC, yeah, if you just want resolution and you don't care about tone, I think it's pretty awesome.
I think the tonality problem for eStats is less of an implementation. It's more the fact that I mean, even if you move up the scale, right? Like even for the stacks, like the full size $10,000 setup, yeah. Man, it's so hard to get away with that tonality problem. Like, even with like the 009S with like BHSE or like freaking Carbon, you still have that problem. It just sounds so thin,
Well, it is thinner. Well, I mean, of course, KC is very very thin. But
yeah,
when
it's very thin.
Well, we talk about the headphones, like recently I've been a bit addicted to the Stax 007 with T8000M, and surprisingly, it's thick enough. It does have quite a bit of weight. At a certain point, and it doesn't sound like everything is screaming. No, it doesn't. It doesn't sound like everything is screaming as compared to, for example, the KSE. So it is possible to have good tonality with stacks. But of course, the whole thing about stacks is not the headphone. It's a system. It's like
right.
Your energizer matters so much. I tried the 007 with some different energizer. They just cannot make it.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with pairing, and for the KSE system, when you scale it down, there really isn't that much option when it comes to energizer. I have seen people mod the portable stacks energizer to fit a KSE 1200. I have no idea how that sounds because that's such a rare combo. But and there are other manufacturers who makes portable e-stats energizers. Shout out to Hua's favorite brand, A2P. But yeah, I'm definitely curious how those would sound. And again, it's a very like new technology, and I think manufacturers don't really have the problem when it comes to resolution when it comes to e-stats, or maybe like even with the really big LCD planar drivers. But like they do have other problem to solve in terms of like tonal balance and their tonality. That's like the big thing. I don't know.
Like,
Yeah.
resolution, tonality, right? It's a very imbalance there.
Yeah. And why don't we move on? Like maybe, and that's all about the real eStats, like the KSC. That's the only IEM that's on the market with the true electrostatics. Why don't we talk about the fake electrostatic, the Sonian? Man, those things are awful. Yeah, I mean, it's man, those are implementation problems. So I think we talked about that before in the previous podcast, where they require a lot of power, and on most IEMs they don't do anything just because they require so much more power compared to the multi-BA that's also in the IEMs. So like they effectively does nothing, right? Who wants to take a crack at it? Yeah.
Well,
and there are a few IEMs that's not the case. Namely the Lycian Annihilator. Well, no, not the DO. And and VE came out with their Elysium, with also the triple hybrid. And I think with the cheaper option, the Empire Year Valkyrie does treble extension pretty well as well. So,
well,
yeah,
I'd like to add, not just that. I think the Jomo Audio Trinity was also all right.
Yeah, the Trinity's alright. I mean, it's not great, honestly.
Yeah,
It does sound a bit rolled off though, the Trinity.
Yeah, it does.
I really think it's the BA just playing more than the DD.
Yeah, well,
as in the
compared
E-stat.
to others, I think they're doing a little better. So I think they do deserve some credit there. And I think the one that does really not bad is Kinera Nana. Surprisingly, very surprising.
I have a question. Have you guys actually seen what the inside of the driver looks like? Because I'm curious, like, how does it look like an electrostatic driver, or does it look like a BA driver on the inside?
It looks like a BA driver. It's a BA with an energizer.
Yeah, okay, that's what I figured. I mean, a BA has a flat membrane that vibrates as well, kind of like a.
Well, I mean, it's the same physics as the BA driver, except the power that's using to driven it is just using the electrostatic thing to move it, like whatever physics, It's just a BA with an energizer attached. And again, like maybe that's my, like you can see on the Estonian they have a trademark, a patent on the thing. It looks like structurally it looks very similar to a BA, driven with electrostatic energizer quotation mark. I don't know how they want to put it. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know. Go on. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm wrong.
Yeah, the movement of the driver is fundamentally very different. Where with BA is more of a I guess the diaphragm is getting pushed up by lever up and down, whereas for the E-stats it's more of the membrane moving left and right.
Oh, okay.
Is it? Or am I wrong as well?
I don't know. Nobody knows.
Yeah, so an electrostatic is faced up and down, so kind of like a dynamic driver to your ear, and then it's being pushed left and right with a magnetic field. It's a thin membrane that is completely pushed by the magnetic field, which is why it requires more power. Whereas like a planar driver has the circuit kind of built into the driver, the membrane itself, and that pushes it.
The correct term for the Sony drivers are electret. Not electrostatic, electret.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always interpret as it's electric driven BA. That's pretty much what I kind of, because small brain.
Yeah, and then like a BA is moves up and down, and then the output goes into the I guess the hole pointed forward towards your ear.
But the point is that it's a shitty technology. Well, I mean, it's still like still really relatively new, and you don't see a lot of IEMs with like good implementation with the Sony and electric drivers. I guess that's my Go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to say, it's just like when BA first came to the consumer market as earphones, they do not know even how to dampen one single BA properly, let alone crossover properly and stuff like that. So similarly, I don't think the electret is a bad technology, but manufacturers do not know how to implement them, and they're just putting in there for the sake of putting in there, and there are people like on a Discord channels like, I won't only want to buy earphones with the Sony EST,
Oh man,
and
call out.
just bought to do this whole marketing thing without knowing, and then in Discord when we tell them that, hey, this is not it, and etc. But some people just coming here to get validation and
you might as well just call them out. Just who is that person now? You might as well just say their name. Just call them out right now. Just do it.
Well, Johnny.
Oh man, this is peer pressure.
No, I mean it's not just him. I just randomly I just do and count, like just read and scroll, and random someone will just, oh wow, the ESD are the best things, and like if you cover, well, you just measure each ball. I mean, not all of the IEMs they use a multi-ball. They may cover it up with a metal mesh, right? But if they don't cover up with a metal mesh, it's easy. You just blue tack it and measure. I can measure it, and like most of them just nothing enough. Just a minus 20 dB, might as well not have it.
Yeah, I mean, I think with as time goes on, and you see a lot like the Lycium, and Empire with the Valkyrie, they did pretty good job of tuning the EST driver, the electric driver. So maybe give it a little bit more time, you'll see a lot more company figuring out how to put it in their IEMs without actually being like a marketing scheme. But for now, it's probably just it's better to just have a DD tweeter.
Yeah, here's a funny thing, right? If you realize, the most of the better ESD implementations, with the exception of Elysium, they all have lesser drivers. So the manufacturer's trend, from what I see, is they put an EST to their high-end models, and their so-called high-end models have lots of BA, or some could be hybrid with DD. They just stack, just throw in this E-stack together with their tons of drivers, and they do not know how to implement it. Whereas the ones who know how to, look at them, they just use lesser drivers, and the lesser drivers actually is well implemented, and then you get the EST to actually play real treble extension.
Yeah, on that I do think it's an issue with space as well. Where the transformer is honestly quite big.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, so I mean there's this space constraint with regards to physically putting in the transformer into the shell, but as of now we do have these these Sonian electrodes where they have four outputs from the transformer, compared to the one as well as the two where they released at first. But yeah, now they do have a 4 variant where the output's more. So I'm really hoping that the implementation will shape up to be better in the future.
And
what I was trying to say is, like, a lot of manufacturers are putting the ESS, no matter how many, is into their higher end models, which have tons of BA, and because of that, the BA play, at a much higher level than the ESTs. And more of the better, well implemented EST happens to have lesser drivers, because they know, by having lesser drivers, they don't overpower the EST.
Yeah, that's true as well. Well, I guess once manufacturers actually learn how to use a voltage divider on an LPAD, I mean that would definitely change things for the electret market, I guess.
You don't need a voltage. Here's my pitch, my $1 million pitch. All right. You just get the Shure KSC system, and on your IEM it will be a KSC DD and BA hybrid. You just have to have 2 plugs. Okay, one plug going into the energizer for the E-stats, and the other one goes into your regular player. Somehow you have to I don't know, have those 2 amp cross talk with each other like a speaker setup.
What the hell?
Well, I have seen some funky setup with bi-amping your earphone, so I don't think this is impossible.
Yeah, you just have to double amp your EST. Just have it going through another amp for EST. That's the solution. You just have to carry another brick around.
Well, you could have
Easy.
you could put 2 amps into the 1 unit.
There you go. You put 2 amps in a 1 unit and have two different connections and have
I
through
think
one
this is
DAC. There you go.
this is a product we should sell to Sony or QDC.
$1 million idea. Yeah, we should sell that to Sony or QVC, one of our low-rate sponsors.
Ethan it first, right?
Of course. I'll have Anthony draw up the blueprints. $1 million. And if anybody ever make that, you'll go back to this podcast and say, "Oh, they called it first. We're gonna sue them for tons of money."
Yeah.
It was all right.
Yeah, we copyrighted it now.
Got it from us. I don't know. I think this is pretty much a short topic today. Does anybody else have anything to say about and just like driver and resolution in general? I think this is pretty vague and really not too much hard science. Just our opinion when it comes to it.
The only thing that I think is interesting is the ones that we all perceive as better resolution are all flat diaphragm. So BA, electrostatic, planar, maybe EST, but yeah, I think that's kind of interesting.
Flat is best.
Yeah,
that's right.
I think to bring back the point that Con said earlier about having treble extension does help in the resolution. So it seems that like multi BA or not, whatever, as like no, yeah, just look at the EST setups, right? Those that are doing well, obviously the EST are outputting enough treble extension, and hey, those are pretty high res.
Yeah. Well, no, maybe. I mean, the
the high res now.
I mean, the Elysians are pretty just
I'm getting a
What you
demo
mean?
next week.
The V Elysium?
Yeah, they're just kind of I mean, it has treble extension, but like the resolution is kind of
Well, I have to give.
That's more of the.
I have to give it a chance to be honest, because like when I was installed, I was like, hey, like the resolution. I simply told the store owner, right? I mean the shopkeeper, like, hey, the resolution is not low, but it's not high as I expect from
like for $38,100 for $3,800. Yeah, it's a pretty mid-5 resolution for that much money.
Well, giving it a chance, so of course there's this whole pairing thing that go on, right? So he said that, oh wow, this should not be so. It's not as an IEM, just like stacks. You should have the energizer. So I had the opportunity to try out of the head amp, and it was quite a big difference.
Okay, now if you have to use if you gotta use a fucking headphone amp for your IEMs, that's just ridiculous. Okay, I'm not.
Yeah, it is. But I'm just giving credit when it's due that it's not entirely low res, but it is such a high barrier to get the high resolution. But then again, that's how VE expects their customers to buy, I guess. So. All
right. Time for me to put 12 volts into my VE Elysium out of my Concube. But yeah, that's probably the end. I don't know. Do you want to take a few questions, Anthony? I don't know if you have any questions.
I don't know. I didn't see anything. Let me look.
All right, no questions today. Short episode. Just because we have a little conflicting schedule with the headphone show. I'm sure they're still going on, so maybe I'll leave our host with that last question, not my question to yourself. How long do you think their podcast will end this? I'm gonna say 3.5 hours. Everybody put a number. Like, We're going by the closest to
So normally
3 hours and
Oh
30.
man,
normally
they can talk forever.
yeah, normally when Resolve goes on forever and ever, he usually cuts it off around 2 hours and 30 minutes. But then that's when they say, "Oh, we gotta end it." So 2 hours and 45 minutes, because that's normally what happens.
Okay. All right, Corn.
3 hours perhaps.
Okay, Ken.
I think 3 hours.
You can't pick the same number, man. Come on.
Oh right. Right. Then 2.5 hours.
Okay, what does the winner get? I don't know. Next podcast we'll announce the winner when we're guessing on there.
I will send
I don't know.
I will send the winner my KZS2 True Wireless.
Awesome,
wow.
awesome.
Oh yeah.
Well, I hope you win, Anthony. So I
Sponsored
don't
by
have to send
Linsel.
anybody anything. All right, everybody, go tune into the Headphone Show and tell them about our bets about them having a forever long podcast with Critical. All right, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.